In Iraq, there has been disastrous bombings, a wave of coordinated explosions. We've got 63 people dead at least. Of course, all those reports are early, and the numbers always fluctuate. But right now, wounded are over 180. It appears, well, first of all, whenever there's bombings in Iraq, everybody always says al-Qaeda. How much is it al-Qaeda in Iraq? How much is it other people? It's almost always impossible to figure out. And so most of the target were Shia. So that's part of what leads people to think that it's al-Qaeda since they are Sunni, right? But some of the targets were also Sunni. And then, of course, the theory behind that was that those are the guys that didn't work with al-Qaeda, so al-Qaeda's pissed. I just think al-Qaeda is way too convenient. Let me tell you what's actually happening behind the scenes. The stuff we do know about, I mean, of course, I don't know who planted the bombs. That just happened just yesterday, right? And so what I do know is that the Prime Minister, Maliki, has basically been doing a purge of his Sunni opposition. He's Shia, and he's accumulating power. And now that the U.S. is leaving and has basically, in essence, left, he's gone around and taken out some of the competitors. Vice President Tariq al-Hashami is basically in hiding now because there's an arrest warrant for him, and he's apparently gone to the Kurdish territory. And Maliki says, oh, no, he was implicated in a series of bombings, etc. 5 years ago. We have to arrest him. Now, is that true? It could be true. It could be a total and utter fabrication. So he goes after one Sunni there. Then he goes after a second Sunni. And this is where you begin to realize, maybe this isn't a coincidence. Deputy Prime Minister Saleh al-Mutlaq and says that, you know what, we got to get a no confidence vote on him. And when you put it all together, it appears that the Shia are trying to purge the government of the Sunnis. Now, this is something the U.S. was warning them not to do the entire time that we were there. Now, we screwed up a lot of things in Iraq. But one thing we were right about, hey, Sunnis and Shia, you should try to get along, otherwise you're going to have disastrous violence, right? But both sides are not buying that. And the Shia, they're like, well, now we're in charge. Saddam used to be a Sunni, and we're the majority, and he kept us oppressed. It's payback time, right? So the minute we're out the door, they're like, let's go get the Sunnis. But then, all of a sudden, you have these bombings where mainly the Shia get hurt. Gee, I wonder why. Look, obviously, it is ethnic strife, sectarian, I should say, strife, right? The Sunni versus the Shia. So who's doing the particular bombings, whether it's al-Qaeda or some other faction of Sunnis, is not as important as the possibility of the Sunnis and the Shias fighting and bringing back whole-scale aggression here. If the Shia start answering with violence, as they did back in 06 and 07, and they start going and pulling Sunnis out of their houses, oh, we're going to have a gigantic mess. And then the second part of that mess is that now that the vice president has gone to Kurdish territory to hide, Maliki's talking tough, telling the Kurds, hey, you better give us that guy back, otherwise there's going to be consequences. Well, oh, if you thought the Sunni and the Shia were bad, wait till you get a load of the Kurd versus Arab fight in Iraq. And then we're right back into the thick of the enormous violence that happened in Iraq. So it's bad news. And one for Iraq, two for the world and the nearby areas. Number three, in reality, for the record of our intervention. Because the whole idea was as soon as we leave, it'll be, I mean, now that we have created this democracy, it will continue to be a flourishing democracy, an example of how to do things right in the Middle East. Does it appear that way? Of course not. One last piece of bad news on this. Politically speaking, no one in the U.S. media will talk about it in that way, even though that's obviously true, that we should have never gone in the first place, that this was inevitable after we went in. No, here's how they will talk about it. I'm telling you ahead of time. They'll say, oh, you see that? Obama shouldn't have pulled out of Iraq. If he just left 20 or 30,000 troops behind, like Mitt Romney's saying now, like the Republicans are saying, like John McCain is saying, we wouldn't have had any of this violence. Oh, McCain is talking about, oh, we handed him a democracy. Oh, and he's going to go screw it up. What a bunch of horse crap. But that's what they're going to peddle, and guaranteed the media in Washington falls hook, line, and sinker for it and goes, oh, you look at that, oh, we withdrew and it's Obama's fault and now there's violence in Iraq. Because they don't bother to figure out what's actually happening on the ground. They just get their talking points from Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, and the RNC, and they're like, oh, we hear that it is Obama's fault because He pulled out of Iraq. By the way, it was Bush's status of forces agreement that actually required us to withdraw from Iraq. How often will that get mentioned? Not very often.